Okay, so the old position on classification of contract terms was that they were either going to be a condition or a warranty. Conditions were important terms of the contract. So in the case of Puisard and Spear, this was turning up to actual performances because she was a singer. Um, Breach of a condition meant that the other side automatically had the right to terminate the contract, regardless of the consequences for them. It was a breach of a condition, and that was what we call repudiatory. A repudiatory breach is one that allows the other side to end the contract. Less important terms were what we call warranties. And so in Bettini and Guy, this was turning up to rehearsals. Now, rehearsals were important, but they weren't the main part of the contract. They weren't what the contract was essentially about, which was singing, performing. And so a failure to turn up to rehearsals was a breach of a warranty which allowed the other side to claim damages, but not to repudiate or terminate the contract. Now, this led to certainty in contract law because you could look in advance and say these terms are clearly what the contract's about, they're conditions, these are lesser terms, and they're warranties. And if I breach a condition, I know that it doesn't matter what the consequences are, the contract can be terminated. If I breach a warranty, I'm only allowed damages. That definitely leads to certainty for the parties, they know what to expect, but it can lead to unfair outcomes. So in a case called Arcos and Renarson, there was a contract about the sale of barrels, wooden barrels that were going to be used to transport cement. Now, the wood used was slightly thinner than the wood that was specified in the contract. And when the barrels were delivered, the buyer looked at the wood and said, oh, these aren't the wood that was specified, that's a breach of a condition, and I'm terminating the contract, and they were entitled to do so. The injustice came that the barrels were perfectly usable still. They might not have had such a long lifespan. Perhaps they could have been used for 15 voyages, 15 lots of luggage or cement rather than 20. And so that could be compensated by compensation, by damages, because they were slightly less valuable in the long term. But they were still perfectly usable, but it was a breach of a condition. And so the buyer was entitled to terminate the contract and end it and send back the barrels, even though they were perfectly usable. Why did they want to end the contract? Well, perhaps they weren't convenient anymore. Perhaps they'd found a cheaper source of barrels somewhere else. So they were looking for a reason to terminate the contract, a reason to repudiate. Measuring the Wood gave them this. So there was certainty in the contract because it was a breach of a condition, but arguably an unjust outcome when they were able to terminate for a technical breach when the goods were pretty usable still.